The answer is a big no. BA also helps us give a study of psychology, and BSc also gives us the same degree. Only difference is there are certain universities who have put psychology in the domain of science, and there are some universities who give psychology in the domain of arts. So, irrespective of you get a degree in BSc psychology or you get a degree in BA psychology, it really doesn't matter. So, the field of psychology, the knowledge of psychology remains the same. So, the way forward is people might graduate in psychology. After psychology, people might get consumed or taken into certain assistant positions with people. But that is where the understanding, so the full placement cannot happen after just graduation. So if you want to get employed in the field of psychology or you want to have your own practice, it's very important that we should have masters in psychology. So again, here also the degrees are in three forms. One is MA in psychology, MA in psychology, MSc in psychology, or MS in psychology. MS psychology is given or awarded in the universities abroad. Then MPhil is one of the course. Now, as the UGC is working on it, now instead of MPhil, there is this another course that is now started by RCI recognized courses. So if we want to practice psychology, it's very important that the individual should have registration. Now, this registering body in India is Rehabilitation Council of India, which is a body under Government of India. Now, so everybody like medical doctors, psychologists are also supposed to be registered under this through their courses. Once we finish their course, we finish MPhil, we finish their clinical associate courses. That is only when we will be eligible to practice. Now, if the individual wants to further move on in the field of psychology, then the the person can do PhD. This is about the courses. So the steps is graduation, post-graduation, MPhil or clinical associate course, or a PhD and a PhD. So this is how the steps go on. Now, once we finish our education, now this education can take us into three fields. One is teaching and research, teaching, another is research, and third is practice. So once we finish our master's or we finish our PhD, we are eligible to get into teaching. So teaching at master's level. If the people are interested in teaching at the school level, then after their master's, they need to have B.Ed program, because at school level in India, we need B.Ed. I have few of my old students who have finished their master's in psychology and then they finished their B.Ed and now they are teachers in the school teaching psychology at 11th and 12th grade. There is one more option, that if I'm interested in psychology, where I want to teach students with special needs, so MA psychology, and then students can do special education B.Ed to teach special children in special schools. So again, this all depends upon where they are interested in. Research is one common area after masters we need to perform. Third is applied work, where all I can apply the knowledge of psychology. After my graduation, I can specialize into whichever field I'm interested into. So these are few that I have put it here. Clinical psychology, which is one of the very common. Clinical psychology, which is one of the very, very common known field. Counseling psychology, rehabilitation psychology, forensic psychology, health psychology, industrial organization psychology, educational psychology, and school psychology, and sports psychology, to name a few. Another very important fields can also be neuropsychology, criminal psychology, and oncopsychology. I'll talk about few of them. And then if you need a little more understanding in other fields, we can have a discussion around that. So I will start with clinical psychology. So clinical psychology, as the name indicates, helps people to assess, diagnose, and treat people with psychological difficulties. So these people are identified, these people are diagnosed, and then put to intervention for their difficulties. So clinical psychologists work majorly with chronic psychiatric disorders or psychiatric disorders, like people having difficulty with anxiety, severe depression, manic depressive psychosis, multiple personality disorders, to name a few. So these people who do clinical psychology, these professionals can be employed in hospitals, can work with psychiatrists, can be employed in mental health settings. For example, if you are a student of Baroda, you will know that so there is this very negatively named place called as mental hospital. The name is Hospital for Mental Health. So the people who do clinical psychology can have employment in any of the government hospitals, irrespective of their hospital for mental health or their otherwise regular government hospital. Now, all the hospitals slowly and steadily have started employing a clinical psychologist under their supervision, under their banner. For example, in Zydus in Baroda has its own clinical psychologist. And I was talking about oncology, which is the study of or helping people intervention with people with diagnosed with cancers. So one of the very good hospitals in Baroda, which is famous for its cancer treatments, there they have employed oncologists. Because when the individual is diagnosed with a disorder, it is not only the physical problems that happens, it is because of that physical problem, the individual people might get into anxiety and depressive symptoms because of the kind of disorders or kind of health issues they have developed. So when the individual knows that I am diagnosed with cancer, there is a lot of fear in their mind that they may have a lot of difficulties. So here the psychologists can help them. So as I mentioned, so clinical psychologists can work in any of these areas: private clinics, NGOs, private hospitals, and freelancers. So clinical psychologists, rehabilitation psychologists, or counseling psychologists can work in private hospitals, NGOs, or private clinics. Another field which is supposed to be, we call it a sister of clinical psychology, that is counseling psychology. This works with basically dealing with mild emotional problems. So people with counseling psychology maintains focus on the personal and interpersonal functioning across the lifespan, irrespective of the age. It can be marital counseling, it can be old age, geriatric counseling, it can be LGBTQ plus I difficulties counseling. So the counseling psychology works in the various spans of difficulties. Third, as I was talking about, IO psychology, industrial organizational psychologists. So these psychologists are majorly trying to study how the individual's productivity can be maintained at workplace, how their interpersonal relationships at work should not affect the ultimate productivity of the organization. So they may develop a lot of ways. For example, personnel selection, selecting people for job is one area where now psychologists have entered in a big way. Let us take a very small example. Indian Defense Forces have a very critical and a very thorough method of employing people. And the last step is psychological assessment. And this psychological assessment leads understanding about how the individual can perform effectively being in defense, because we all know how stressful is the job of defense. So when we talk about, IO psychology, this is where the people can, so I'm sure you might be aware of DIPR, Defense Institute of Psychological Research, is the organization in Delhi where the updated methods of employing people, training people for defense works. So I'm just giving one example. Similarly, you can find IO psychologists in all the industries, government agencies. So these people basically work for the productivity, for their employment, for their training and development in the area. Next is educational and social psychology. So when you're talking about educational and social psychology, so these are the people who are trying to work towards the effectiveness of education system. We all know that this is one area where the educational psychologists are concerned with the study of human learning, how the learning can be effective. You would see that the schools, when I was a student, the kind of books I read is very different than the students now studying books. Their books are more colorful, their books are more gender neutral. So all these things, that how it impacts the teaching learning process, what methods should a teacher use in the school to make the teaching learning more effective. So this is where the educational psychologists work in this area. So what are the learning situations? How can the learning situation be more effective? How can the evaluation process may happen? So now you will see that there are open textbook examinations where students can use textbooks in their examination. So they have identified, so NCRT has been going spearheadingly working towards ultimate or the new researches in this area. I will talk about neuropsychology, because neuropsychology is a specialized field which works with the brain functioning related to the psychological processes. For example, if you want to understand, you would have heard of this common word Alzheimer. You would have heard of learning disability. So when you talk about these disorders which are directly related to the neural functioning of an individual, that is where the neuropsychologist role comes in. You would have heard that when people get old, they tend to forget things. So these are one areas where neuropsychologists venture into. So neuropsychologists generally branch out from clinical psychology. Another is sports psychology. So when you're talking about sports psychology, which is now a upcoming field, we have, I think, two, three institutes. One institute in Punjab is very famous for its master's program in sports psychology. So now they work with sports professionals. We all know that when the people are working, when the people are working towards or working out, or when people are performing in sports, there is a lot of stress. There's a lot of performance anxiety. All that can be worked out beautifully with the help of a sports psychologist. So these sports psychologists can work towards their effectiveness and productivity, how their performance can increase, how they can work more effectively. So now sports psychologists are like, for example, Indian cricket team has its own sports psychologist. And because of now T20 or the football matches or other kind of things, now most of the sports bodies have their own sports psychologists. Now, another field which I was talking about, research, experimental psychology, which is more of a theoretical subject. Now, so all the experiments whatever we talk about the teaching, learning, about the neurology, about the clinical area, these all are experimented in the experimental psychology. And this experimental psychology helps us in basic areas, understanding how does it function. All these experiments are done, and based on that, they can be applied into the fields. So people who specialize or who have keen interest in cognitive psychology, experimental psychology, these people can get into more into researches. So they can be members at college and universities. Health psychology, which is nowadays one of the very, very important fields, because now we all see that the lifestyle changes, the amount of time spent on internet, the lifestyle issues where people are running for materialism and there is no time left for individuals' own physical health. So physical health of the people is getting deteriorated. And that is where the role of health psychologist comes into. So how to promote and maintain good health and prevent illnesses. So it is not only prevention of mental illnesses, but also physical illnesses. So they are employed in hospitals. As I was mentioning, in Baroda, if you are the student of Baroda, you will know that there is a TB hospital. There is this Vyrock, which is one of the very famous orthopedic hospital. All of them have a psychologist working out, helping them to overcome their or to deal with their physical difficulties. And not only that, bringing about changes in the lifestyle. So health agencies, medical schools, rehabilitation centers, all of them can have a health psychologist along. So talking towards the end, I would want you to understand that where do all these psychologists work? So psychologists can have their own private practice. They can work in corporations, like working in the field of market research, training and development, consulting, making decisions. They can work in the education sector, where they can work either as careers, like all the IITs and IIMs have minimum 2 psychologists under them. So working in the universities for their betterment, for the students' careers or their mental health difficulties, in the government hospitals, in health and welfare centers, community agencies, where uh, the people are working towards helping them to what we call it as helping them to identify places where they can help the community at large to overcome the difficulties. Police force, law courts, and prison, and that is where the role of criminal psychologist also comes into. Forensic psychologists also come in. Counseling services in school, universities, and special schools. NGOs employ them, and research institutes. Now, towards the end, I would like to talk about Navrachana University, who has started BA Honors in Humanities and Social Sciences. It is an undergraduate program, which is a 4-year program, and we students have specializations in psychology, economics, urban planning, and development. So any student who prefers to join Navrachana University to study about psychology, because our course is much more eligible not only to teach psychology, but it also helps in the overall development of the individual. And that is why we have a lot of skill enhancement courses in it. And we also give 2 internships. So this is the website. If anyone is interested, or any of your relatives, friends are interested, you can give them this website and they can go and find out for themselves. So this is my email ID, just in case you want to get in touch with me. And now the house is open for question answers, if you have any. Anyone? Either I was too clear or I was not at all clear. What do I assume? Yes. Yes, Tamanna, please.
Ma'am, I would like to know how we can go into psychotherapy.
So through clinical psychology and counseling. So what you want to know, how to learn that or how to
Yes, yes.
get
Actually,
therapy?
I want to, no, I want to become a psychotherapist. So how I
Okay.
can do that?
Yes, yes. So here, to become a psychotherapist, the first step is definitely a graduation and then a post-graduation in clinical psychology, where you're trained for psychotherapy. And once you finish that, there are specific specialized courses to teach you in-depth psychotherapy. Though if you do MPhil or a clinical associate program for Rehabilitation Council of India, you will definitely have the exposure to that. I hope I've answered your question. Tamanna, have I answered your question?
Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about cognitive science or cognitive psychology, Vidhan? I'm talking more with reference to cognitive psychology. So, cognitive psychology will definitely uh, help you to help will help anyone to get into the fields of either research. Nowadays, recently, I was approached by an organization who makes apps. So they were interested in getting more knowledge on cognitive. So cognitive is going ahead a lot with AI, because nowadays you will see there are a lot of apps who helps in creating some kind of self support system, and that is where the cognitive psychologist role is coming. Number one. Number two, cognitive psychology also, it's people those are more interested in experiment research, they would be interested in getting into the cognitive psychology. One of the old student of mine, he did his regular MA clinical psychology, and then he was employed in one of the organization who prepares apps and who works towards the who are more interested in knowing about the experimental psychology, or how the knowledge of learning motivation can be utilized in AI. So that is where they are trying to work there. I hope I've answered your question with answer. Anyone else has a question? Any questions you have related to psychology? Any question you are interested for Navrachana University or anything? Okay, so I assume that you are clear on that. Reach out to me on the email ID that I told you in case you have Any questions? Thank you so much for joining. Okay. College starts from colleges. So there's this question. College starts from 29th of July. And any good colleges for this? Of course, cognitive psychology related. You will have colleges who are specializing in cognitive psychology, like one in Bangalore, which I know is Christ. And there's this another, I am forgetting the name. So basic graduation goes the same. It is only in masters that you specialize in cognitive psychology. So down south, we have more colleges related to cognitive psychology. Here in Gujarat, we may not have who specialize in cognitive psychology. And of course, Western countries have specific specialization in cognitive. Yeah, fine. Any other question? Okay, fine. Then we stop. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great life ahead. Sagar bhai, I can stop.